Hey, it's Aaron from AaronOnAutos.com, and today I want to talk about peak battery. So this is something that's affecting all electric vehicles. So whether they be plug-ins or full battery electrics, it's something that is not often discussed. It's also something that's very misunderstood. If you're in the EV community, so you're a big proponent of electric vehicles, I call those people evangelists, EV evangelists, get it? I'll put it up here. It's often misunderstood. It's often assumed that the reason automakers aren't making a whole lot of electric vehicles is because they are afraid of them. Something like that. There are several reasons that automakers haven't jumped in feet first and seriously just started moving all production over to electrics. There are a lot of issues there that proponents of electric vehicles may or may not want to admit to. Some of those are things to do with marketing, with the number of people that are willing to buy them, and with a lot of things related to that. It's not the technology. The technology's there. It's not, we have the capability of making a battery electric vehicle that can drive just about as far as a gasoline vehicle. With very few exceptions, that's true almost across the board. Until you get into the very large vehicles, that's the truth right now. The problem is that there is a backup. So there's a bottleneck, and that bottleneck has to do with batteries. It doesn't have to do with can't make good enough batteries. It has everything to do with can't make the batteries. So I wanted to talk about this because it's something that is very often misunderstood, very often ignored, and a lot of times it's just, honestly, it is the reason that things aren't happening the way that evangelists would like them to. And what brought this to my mind, because I had known it a little bit and I had understood it, but what really brought this forward for me was on Friday, I believe it's Friday, on Friday, a friend of mine, John Goreham, published an article at TorqueNews, which I used to write for, which is how I know John. He published a very good article called Peak Battery, the real reason affordable electric vehicles are failing in America. And I'm going to show you that article. It'll be on the screen right here. Magic. And he's just talking about affordable battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles sold in America over the and what he's found is that there is a peak. So the batteries or the vehicles being made at most automakers tend to peak at about 2,000 units a month. That seems to be the highest rate they can produce them. And if you compare that to any other high-selling vehicle on the market, he talks about the 2013 Volt versus the Honda Civic that same year, which at the time was, I believe, the best-selling compact. The Civic had 10 times the volume. So it's not a question of, that was 2013. That was back in the day. That was quite a while ago. But what he's pointing out is that since then, nobody has broken that 2,000 unit per month barrier. That seems to be a real stop. What John is saying is that it's clearly not design, engineering, or production. It's clearly not the technology that's failed. What's failed is there is not an infrastructure. There's just not a supply chain. And basically it comes down to this. If you don't have the raw materials, you can't make the components. If you can't make the components, you can't make the vehicle. So if you can't make the vehicle, you can't sell it. So right now there's a big bottleneck. There are, and there's a lot of restriction. There are very specific things that that are required to make a battery for an electric vehicle. And some of those things are getting hard to come by. We have a shortage of several of the raw materials required to make a battery. You can't. We have a potential cobalt shortage. We have a potential. We have bottlenecks in lithium production. We have problems with just a lot of the small materials that are required for this. And there you go. And so what John points out in his article that's very important to understand is this is not conjecture. This is not being assumed by people. This is being admitted openly by the automotive manufacturers. Automakers are admitting that this is what's going on. They didn't used to, because it wasn't politically correct. You would get lambasted as anti-EV. Now, not so much. You can say, look, here's the reason. And that's because automakers really do need to explain it, because they're getting attacked by people saying, well, you're not making these clean cars because you hate them, or because you're anti them, or you don't like them. And now they're explaining it more openly. John points out that the reason that certain cars that are not in these same supply chain bottlenecks are able to have higher production is because they are not in that supply chain. So, for example, the Toyota Prius, most models of the Prius do not use lithium-ion batteries. They use nickel metal hydride. Those batteries have a very different and well-established supply chain for Toyota. And they have a different chemistry. They do not require a lot of the things that are required for the lithium batteries. So because of that, Toyota can keep making them. And what John points out is that Toyota has specifically targeted using NIM batteries, nickel-based batteries, for a lot of their vehicles that you may not expect to see them in, because of these supply chain problems and because of the limitations of lithium ion, cold weather performance, things like that NIM doesn't have to look to. One of the reasons that Tesla has been able to do so well so far is because they have cornered a supply chain. The way John puts it is, ironically, Tesla's success in sales and production of the Model 3 may have influenced Toyota's design decision. He's talking about the NIM batteries. With Tesla now providing tens of thousands of lithium battery-equipped cars per month in a world starved of lithium batteries, designing one into an affordable car is a bad idea because of the cost curve that creates. Basically, Tesla has almost cornered the market on making lithium batteries. Somehow Tesla has managed to get a huge grip on a large chunk of the supply chain required for lithium batteries. Some of that is because of Tesla themselves. Some of that is because of their partnership with Panasonic. Regardless, what's happened is Tesla owns a very large piece, a very large chunk of the overall lithium battery capacity right now. Now, will that change? Possibly. Would it be a reason that Tesla would get bought out by somebody? That's a good conjecture, because it is possible. So what we're looking at is, right now, batteries have a limit. We have a limit to how many we can make right now. That limit is not going to go away really soon because it's a supply problem. It's a problem with the core things that make batteries. The issue is that if companies start targeting getting more of that supply, the supply is going to cost more, which means the batteries cost more. So in the short term, it means that will not lead to more electric vehicles, not in the affordable sense. But in the long term, it would mean that there would be. The issue is that car makers are having to decide whether or not it's worth it, and then they have to spend the time and resources to get it. And that time and that resource is not going to be what people who are looking for an electric vehicle want to hear. They don't want to wait. They're tired of waiting. They think that they've waited too long already. Some manufacturers are aggressively going after supply. Volkswagen has been buying up, and getting lots of making partnerships, doing a lot of things to get into more lithium batteries. We're seeing, like I said, Toyota has figured out a roundabout. They found an alleyway to go around the whole thing. So they're using that. That's good for them. We're going to see other automakers start to make some of these deals. And potentially, like I said, we could see something happen that causes Tesla to lose out, or to have to give up some of their share. Players in electric vehicles, mostly heavy vehicles, but still in electric vehicles like BYD, that own huge amounts of lithium capacity. And those companies like that, if they could cut a deal that worked really well for them with another automaker, they would definitely take that deal. And I think it's just a matter of time before those things happen. I'm suspecting that they're waiting it out, because BYD is a very, very large company, and I very much suspect that they're waiting it out, waiting for the right deal. I don't think they want to jump on board with somebody who is not going to greatly profit them. And it could be that BYD is quietly mulling over the idea of producing their own passenger vehicles. Right now, they're making mostly buses and trucks with or without electrics, mostly with electrics. And their bread and butter are cell phone batteries. But I could really see them doing something more, and I think they're just waiting for the right deal. But all of this is kind of a guess. What we do know is that there is a big bottleneck. John's pointed it out. He's made a very clear case, and he's right on the money. There is definitely a bottleneck in terms of lithium battery, affordable lithium battery production. And the bottleneck is not because automakers aren't willing to do it. The bottleneck is entirely because the supply is not there. And we have to wait for that supply. Obviously there's a need, somebody's going to fill that need. It's just a matter of time. But it's not going to be as fast as everybody wants it. That's it. So that's what I got. Hopefully this helped some of you understand what's happening in the market right now, why there aren't more electric vehicles. And I want to thank John for writing this article and then giving me permission to use it right here so that I could share it with you. So there you go. This has been Aaron on autos.com. Talk to you again soon.